Welcome to the Disability Adventures podcast. I'm Andrea Anderson.
And I'm Chip Dodd from Team Disability.
Hi. So I am here with Chip Dodd, the Chip Dodd. Um, and he just finished the Shenandoah Epic 24-hour adventure race. And I first have to say, I am so proud of you.
Oh, cool.
But not just because you did awesome. I mean, I'm proud of that for sure. But even before you had the balls to sign up for the race in the first place, like we were 1 week out from Expedition Ozarks, and I'm not ready to do another race. And I knew I wouldn't be ready to do another race. But Chip was certain it would be fine for him. And our approach to people with disabilities is to focus on what they can do and not focus on the limitations. And I think you're an excellent example of doing that for yourself. So you did not stop yourself. And I think, well, you can elaborate, but I want to know what your goals were going into the race and what made you think it was a good idea.
Yeah, and it's good that we're doing this race ramble because there's a lot going on here, I think, in all of this. So one is the Epic was my first race ever, right? So it's a little bit nostalgia to go back and see like what a dumbass I was back in 2016 or whatever. I didn't know how to use a compass and being not even knowing I needed a water filter. And then now it's like I'm, doing pretty well and trying to keep up with the top teams. So that's always fun. So when Clay, as those of you who follow us, you know that we just got done with Ozarks. Ozarks was effectively a shakedown for Croatia because Clay had won a free ticket to Croatia and needed a team. We were actually going to use the Epic as our 4-person team shakedown for Croatia. But then Ozarks popped up and we're like, oh, well, shucks, we'll just go do Ozarks as our 5-day shakedown, which left the Epic open. And it was directly after Ozarks. And so I decided I wanted to do it solo primarily because one is I thought that there's a potential for me to not be ready to do the race and I would have to drop and I didn't want to let a team down. Or I would feel great and I want to go just all out. And I didn't, I knew Andrea could potentially have had a problem and all that. And we normally don't do races back to back. And if I was injured, I could have volunteered or something and begged Mark Harris to forward me the money to another race or whatever. So that was kind of the purpose of it, is just like I couldn't let the Epic go by and not be there on the property doing something. But I got out of Ozarks. I felt fine. I rode my bike after Ozarks the day after. My knee was a little puffy on the left side. The day after that, everything was fine. So I knew I could go into the Epic and be competitive. But also we have Croatia in less than a month. So I went in also knowing that if anything started to go wrong, if I felt any problems with my knees or back or anything, I was going to back it down. But other than that, this was Chip going all out, trying to get to the podium unless something stopped me. So that was my goal. Podium was the goal.
Yeah. Yet another thing I'm really proud of you for is you managed that. It's just a day later. This is Monday. You're walking around just fine. It seems like you did not incur any injuries. No. You're feeling good, right?
I was a little sore yesterday on the drive home. Just I'd get out of the van to fill up and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my God, everything hurts. But I feel great today. I'm going to go for a run or a bike ride today. I can't tell I raced.
That's like superstar status. And from what I understand, the only other person who raced the Shenandoah Epic and also the Expedition Ozarks was Mark Latanzi.
I did.
So you're up there in good company.
Do not compare me to Latanzi. That guy's
I wonder if he did the Shenandoah Epic in 2016.
Probably. Knowing him.
Maybe even fun.
Every race everywhere in the world.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's really great.
So,
and
one other thing on the goals, and this is for teams that don't do expedition races, this is a very big disadvantage for you. So we just got done with Ozarks, and we also have done Paraguay and all these things. Like stage 1 of Paraguay was a 3-day trek, 3 days. Like that's stage 1. You haven't even gotten to stage 2 yet. It's 3 days. So a lot of teams, when they just do the backyard races, 24 hours, it seems like 24 hours is this really long period of time. And oh my God, it's going to be so hard, especially it gets dark and cold at night and you just want to go to the finish. And so it's easy to give up. It's easy to just say, you know what, we've done what we needed to get do here and get back. And I know it's kind of funny. Matt Wilson was there. His job was like cheerleader at that TA when teams were leaving the TA to go out on leg 5. A lot of them wanted to stop, and his job was like, yeah, guys, you can do this. You can keep going. It's great. You're gonna have fun. Trust me. And it's so funny because Mary Foster I was talking to Matt, and Matt was, go Chip, you can do this. And she's like, you're not supposed to do that with the teams that know what they're doing. Those are for the new teams. But either way, coming into this, after Ozarks, it's like, what's 24 hours? Like that's the end of a race. That's like, for me, 24 hours is a very short period of time mentally. So at no time did it even cross my mind not to go all the way until the last minute to get every possible CP.
So that also worried me a little bit because I know what you're talking about. And in our minds, 24 hours is not that long. But I thought that maybe since you were thinking that you might go out too strong and you might blow yourself up or you might have an injury. And of course, I'm really relieved that that didn't happen. And I kind of got a sense right away that you were managing your pace because it was consistent the whole time. So I'm really
You're exactly right.
That too.
Especially for any teams that do these, sorry, we're turning this into a tutorial, but yes, managing your pace, your hydration, and your nutrition, especially electrolytes and all of that. That was something I knew going into this. It was hot in the morning. I knew I wanted to get in front of a lot of teams, so I really blew it out, running up the hill, trying to pass. We did the bushwhacker cross, which we're going to talk about that. But I had a lot of water on me. I knew I do not want to get to the top of that ridge line and then not have water and get into the paddle completely dehydrated. So I did a lot of planning on that to do the nutrition and the hydration. I used the paddle section to redo electrolytes. But the pacing yourself is why in the middle of the night when you feel like crap and it's cold and it's dew and all this, I was able to keep going because I continued to feel strong because I'd managed that pretty well this race.
So what you're saying is experience goes a long way.
And knowing your body. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's really great. Okay, so the format of the race itself, there were 5 legs. 4 of them were manageable pretty much by most of the teams. They were close to the main park, the Shenandoah River State Park, also called Andy Guest State Park. It's a great park, lots of fun. It's really beautiful. So that first leg, why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, they did a prologue first. I guess that's the very beginning of the race, and I totally botched that. I was talking as I usually do. I mean, these things are social events for me, so I have a real hard time focusing on whatever somebody's saying outside of who I'm talking to.
Okay, I have to interrupt you just to say that is one of your biggest problems is you talk so much. It's also a great strength of yours, but you can also turn almost anything into a tutorial. I meant to interject that before, which is good. The mansplaining is usually done in quite a kind way, but
I want people to enjoy adventure racing, so learn from my mistakes.
Anyway, okay, so continue.
I
didn't even say that it was estimated 3.5 hours for fast teams, 7 hours for slow teams. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I totally botched the prologue. They did this little puzzle where you have your little pizza box that they gave you with your t-shirt and all your stuff, and it had letters on the back, and we had to lay it on the ground. All the teams had to work together to get the clues, and then you had to write the clues on your thing, and then you run around the resort and find 4 chips. Well, because I was talking like Wild Bill about the Ozarks or something, I'm not listening to the guy on the microphone, and so I'm thinking like, my box had A on it. I just need to do the A clue, go get my token, and I'll get back and I'm ready to go. And then I realized, holy crap, I've got to do B, C, and D. Like I got to run back over and look at the clues. And I could have dropped my backpack because mandatory gear wasn't there, but I thought I just had to do one. So I kept my backpack on. So I'm running around the whole damn prologue with a heavy backpack with all my watering gear. Everybody else is bareback and they're just running like sprinters. So that's why I came out of the prologue super late because I wasn't listening and didn't behave in class.
That is so Chip style. And also, I heard you were the very last person to get your tracker.
I forgot. You need a tracker and you need the finger banger.
And you forgot all this experience.
No, I was talking. I had people to catch up with. It's a reunion for me.
Oh,
okay. So either way, so I leave on the trek like way behind everybody, and that's annoying. But I was like, I got 24 hours. This is a piece of cake. But I pushed really hard. I was trying to jog everything I could jog. I was kind of managing going by my heart rate. So I would jog everything I could jog. I think I got up to about 1/3. By the time I got to CP1, I'd probably pass 1/3 maybe, because I knew Strong Machine was right there, and I passed them as they were trying to find the first checkpoint, which didn't exist. So I knew, I was like, okay, if I'm back up to some of the top teams.
Wait a minute. What do you mean CP1 didn't exist?
CP1 was missing. And so Misty, a volunteer and part of the Adventure Enablers team, she was there with her cell phone, like live broadcasting everybody where the CP should have been, and the CP was not there. So basically, she was like, here's your punch, knuckle punch, and you got your thing, the tracker. So everybody that walks by Misty got the punch. So I was there with Strong Machine because they were looking for the thing. I was like, it's Misty, she's the punch. And she's like, who's Misty? So they wanted to be sure I wasn't tricking them.
Great job, Misty. She also did Expedition Ozarks, so that might be why she wasn't racing.
Yeah, and Mary too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So either way, so Punch 1 did not exist. You go by Misty, you get credit for it. So I knew that when Strong Machine was there, that I was like, okay, I'm back up to where I've caught myself back up. So I guess we're basically going up to the ridge line, and you go down the ridge line, you come back down. This is kind of typical Adventure Enablers. But for those of you who've done the race before, you know that there's probably no water. So you actually need all of the water that you're going to possibly need until you start coming back down the mountain. You might be able to find a place to filter, but not towards the end.
So potentially for 7 hours for some.
If you're walking.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but how long did it take you? And did you have enough water?
Idea. I did have enough water. I'm glad I did on the way walk back. I did. Just because it was super accessible, I did grab a liter filtered water out of a thing. And so that way, as I'm kind of jogging, hiking to the paddle put in, I am getting as much liquids into my body as I can, because I knew I had pushed really hard. And I knew when I get in the paddle, I'm going to cramp up.
So it looks like you took 3 hours and 44 minutes, if I'm looking at that correctly.
Sounds right.
So yeah, good job. And you're right, you were in the top 1/3, if not the top quarter, when you got to that TA. And miracle upon miracle, the TA, you just walked in and walked out. There was a live stream from there, and I took a second look because that can't be Chip. It was too fast. So I kind of wondered, like in my mind, you must have treated all of those first 3 or 4 stages as just one stage. Like you didn't even, like I said, you just walked in and out. So
yeah, I had staged my paddle gear a little more thoughtfully, and I knew I'd be in a kayak. I knew I needed food and water, and I wanted it accessible. So, so basically, I just walked into TA, grabbed my paddle bag, and walked down to the waterfront. Grabbed a boat and walked down to the waterfront. So there was no like pulling out crap and messing with crap. I got basically the minute I got into the boat, I put my water bag between my legs. My food was already pre-prepared in my my life jacket, so I just had to put a life jacket on, take the assemble the paddle and basically put my water bag with 2 what do you call those things, like Gatorades, put it between my legs, and I was off. I pulled my shoes off when I got in the boat. That was it.
So you're already disadvantaged by being in a solo kayak. They're shorter than the canoes. You only have 1 man paddling instead of 2. So how did you try to keep pace with everybody else?
Yeah. So I do know that I suck at paddling, and I know how to paddle. It's like some reason people pass me. I have no idea why. And the boats are typically slower. So this was my strategy on this, and this was the first time I'd really put this much effort into thinking about it. But I was like, if you stop paddling, basically that's when you slow down, right? So I was like, how can I most efficiently eat a lot and drink a lot early in the paddle to let my body recover from the 3.5 hours of pushing up and down this mountain? And I knew I was going to cramp. I could just feel it coming the minute I get in the boat. You kind of get in the boat and you move your legs and you feel your calf kind of start locking up. So I knew it. I was like, I've got to get electrolytes in. So so what I would do is like I would waste 1 stroke to do one thing. So for example, it might be 1 stroke, pull a piece of food out of my jacket, and then start stroking again. And then the next stroke is open the food, and then I start stroking again. And then the next one is take a bite and start stroking again. Or the water, I would like undo the cap on my Gatorade bottle and then stroke and then drink and then stroke and then put the cap on. That's a different. So it's like every task was 1 paddle stroke to try to keep the boat moving forward. And the minute you stop paddling, the boat spins and turns sideways. So I was trying to keep the boat focused, and that worked pretty well. I did get past. I got passed by a lot fewer teams than I normally get passed by. How about that?
I would agree with that, and I was excited for you there. it looked like things went well. There weren't any real nav decisions to be made. But it was quite a long paddle. And then after the paddle, there was a bike ride. So the bike was estimated to be 40 kilometers and between 5 and 7 hours. Tell us about that leg.
Yeah, it seemed pretty straightforward. There's a lot of dirt roads. This is basically to get you back down to the park to do the single track in the Andy Guest Park. The bike ride to me seemed pretty straightforward. I mean, the bike I already had preloaded with food. It had rained pretty bad up until the TA. The sun came out at the TA, but basically it was cold and rainy coming out. I mean, I remembered I was right on the verge of shivering, which was annoying because I wasn't expecting that. And but I'm soaking wet. Of course, I'm not going to pull out a rain jacket and all that kind of stuff. So it's basically all of my gear. I went into the paddle assuming I'm getting tipped out, and that way everything was in a dry bag. So when it started pouring down rain, I didn't have to mess with anything. I was already waterproofed. So I basically got off the paddle and just I had to reshuffle some maps around, and I did that in the U-Haul because it was raining. And then I got on the bike, and after that, it was like basically it's just a matter of just hammering because at that point I'm already food and hydrated, and so it's just hammering as fast as I could. And I think I was going neck and neck with a couple solos, and I made a couple dumb. This is one thing for also racers. You make dumb decisions when your heart rate's high. It's just your brain doesn't work as well. So I'm on this bike and I'm hammering and I'm feeling like I'm going fast and I'm passing people, and then I make a wrong turn. Like, damn. And I go back and I pass the person again and then make another wrong turn. And so I'm like, I can't remember. I think the guy's name's Matt, one of the solo racers. Like, he's being a little slower, but very methodical. And he's staying in front of me, even though I'm like killing myself.
That's like, a familiar feeling for us, isn't it?
Just needed to stay on this guy's ass and just let him do all the nav because I am screwing up.
It didn't look like that from the trackers, by the way. I mean, there's just one point you went to point number 13, and a lot of people did that as an out and back along the Big Oak.
Well, I was talking about on the getting to the park. I wasn't with anybody in there, but getting to the park, taking all the roads. Okay. I was just making just little dumb errors, and I realized I got to back down the pace. I'm not thinking right, and so I did slow down a little bit, but I kind of learned from that. But it was just frustrating. And I think Matt Wilson was on the side of the road as I went by, and he kind of videoed me, and I'm like, I'm trying to make one wrong turn for every turn. It's like, I mean, I recovered quick. It wasn't like I was lost. It was just like I'd pass in there, so I just have to turn around and come back. And it was just dumb. I felt like a moron.
Well, that's not necessarily like you, because I think you're an excellent bike navigator. And I think one of the things you do really well is single track and look at the map. Right. And go the right direction. All of that while you're riding is really tricky. So then, like I said, that point 13, some people did it as an out and back, and you kind of did a roundabout. You did a little bit of a bushwhack, but then rode the kind of a windy trail. I'm sure it was a lot of fun. Those trails are a lot of fun.
And the trails are fun. So it's kind of, I mean, I probably should have done the out and back like everybody else, but it was like, maybe I saved 30 seconds. I mean, I'm pretty fast on the bike. So I knew it's like, I just need to just push hard and do it. Don't sit there and look at the maps for 5 minutes to figure out the most strategic. Is just make a decision and go.
You had a lot of people that you were neck and neck with there, and I want to say you were always within the top 20, I think, and right around there you might have been around top 10. So there were some chances there that you could have gotten ahead, but it would have been seconds anyway. But you all, even despite what you're saying, you all stuck right close together.
Yep.
And so the next leg was leg 4. That was a trek section for 13 kilometers, 2 to 4 hours estimated. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, that was a typical orienteering, kind of point to point, going up and down. I mean, there was a lot of elevation, so that it definitely was taxing on the legs. I made a couple small little errors. There was a parallel re-entrant that I got turned around in.
Right there.
Yeah, that's
near right point 16. And I feel like we've been a little turned around in there before.
That's the other thing. Talking about transitions, I think the that solo that we were talking about, I think we came into transition together or near each other. And like, again, I went in and went right back out. There was just no piddling around. I just dropped the bike, grabbed the stuff, and went. So I'm pretty sure I got on that trek section before he did. And but I think because of my error on that parallel error on the gully, he caught me. But then we kind of did 2 or 3 together a little bit. We're not working together, but just we're side by side and doing different strategies there. But I don't think I saw him again after we got out of there. I think he started slowing down or something, or I was just running, or can't remember. But those last 2 points coming into TA that were right along the road, I didn't see. I thought he was right on my tail, and I didn't see him.
Yeah.
But no, it was a pretty straightforward trek section. It was fun. The park's beautiful. Points were placed where they should have been. Everything was great.
Yeah. So then that was the first 4 legs of the race, which, like I said, we were told, that it was probably going to be pretty manageable for a lot of the teams. And then leg 5 is the big one. And I don't think there were that many teams that even attempted the 5th leg. But even leading, no, after that started, I kind of thought to myself, it's nighttime now. This is when Chip's going to shine. He hasn't been able to pass quite a few of the solo males in front of him. And there were about, a handful of 3-4 person co-ed teams. And I thought, this is Chip's chance, because he's got that endurance and he's got great navigation, even at night. So, and it happened. So he started off that bike trek leg, and mostly bike, but then you'd have to get off your bike to go get the points. And it was estimated to be 50 kilometers between 9.5 hours for fast teams and 16 hours for slow teams. And I didn't mention this before, but all of the points needed to be collected in order. So you probably had a pretty good idea all of the time of where you stood, or at least who had passed you and who hadn't. It was quite a conga line for a lot of the race. I kind of wondered how that felt, if that was fun for racers. What did you think of that in order design?
Yeah, I mean, generally I don't like it because it does put the pressure when you're with somebody, that you're in order ranked, you are side by side with them. And so, if somebody passes you when it's a row game, who cares? I don't know how many points you have. You don't know how many points I have. Let's just pass each other and you don't have any stress. So there was the stress of knowing your placement. When you see somebody in TA, they're right there next to you. But also I knew that my advantage was going to be after like the 18th hour, because it's like, that's the hardest part. It's that overnight, you're tired, you just want to finish. Do I really need to go get those points? So in the expedition races, it's a race of attrition. It's like, don't break stuff, don't break people, don't break your head, your mentality. Everybody can push for 12 hours. That's like the average athlete. It's the mental toughness after you get later in the race. So I knew it. I don't care where these people are. I'm not going to push myself just to beat somebody at this, 12 hours into the race. It makes no sense. My advantage is after the 18th hour, when most people start, having little pity parties and want to go to the finish and drink a beer. So I did my own course. I did my own race. I didn't really care too much where people were, because I knew my advantage was going to be in the last 6 hours or so. The thing about that last section, like section 5, like you could see how long the what do you call it, the time estimates were when you left your TA bin. I mean, it just got dark, and like you're leaving your TA bin, like this is the last time you see your bin. Like whatever you put on your bike for leg 5, that's what you got, because even though you're in the park, you're not allowed to come back to your bin after you've checked out. So that was a little bit like, that's where I was soaking wet. It was muggy and kind of hot, and just I felt like I just got out of swimming pool. So I completely changed clothes. I put on fresh socks, fresh shoes, and I didn't eat or anything. I learned from Romy from in the Ozarks. I think Rachel said, you're not allowed to eat in TA. If you're not moving, you're not eating. So I was like, okay, so I have to eat while I'm out there on the bike or whatever. But I made sure the bike was loaded down with enough calories to get me through the end of the race, and then went on my way.
So if you're watching this on YouTube, I just started sharing the tracker, and mostly so you don't have to stare at our faces that much longer. But here's the TA, and Chip started off, and there were some points, 29, 30, and 31.
It starts off going into the other end of the park.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Okay, so you came over here, you got to ride the Allen Mountain Trail. Did you get to ride that up or down? It's a great trail at that park.
Again, there's the what do you want to do as a mountain biker, and then there's what do you want to do just to get the CPs. And so I was just trying to get the CPs, so I wasn't paying attention to which direction. I meant to go around one of them, and I missed the trail, and so I did it as an out and back, which was probably the most efficient way to do it.
A lot of people did it that
But
way.
again, I was like, I'm just going to brute force get through this. It sometimes that's the other thing. Whenever it's hot and muggy like that, my glasses fog up and I can't use my readers. So it's like sometimes I'm just like I can't figure out the maps because they have all the little minute details, and so I'm really struggling on the eyesight thing. So sometimes I just see a trail and I'm just like, it's on the right bearing, I'm going for it. Maybe it's bad, I don't know.
Maybe that's when someday you'll wish you had a team with you to be able to be
Like,
your
can
eyes
read
for
this?
you.
Yeah.
So did you, I'm just curious, did you have to hike your bike up Allen Mountain Trail?
No, I think I rode that whole thing.
Yeah, I figured. There's a really steep section, I think, at the beginning.
Yeah, I may have
don't
done
know how
it
you
once or
rode that.
twice, but no, I tried to push and ride. Riding's usually faster than the hike a bike. The other thing that was really difficult with this, or at least I had trouble with, they gave a supplementary map of just this section, but it didn't have a scale on it. It was a little bit more zoomed in, but basically without a map scale, I didn't have a map tool. So you couldn't tell, like, doing the measurements to say, okay, when I'm on this trail, I'm going to go down 250 meters and it's going to be on the right. So, and even the little scale that was part of the map just had 0 to 500 to 1,000 meters. So you can't get the micro nav on that. And I didn't have time to like tear it off and mark it myself and all that. So this one, I was pretty much just going by train association and trying to use the compass on the turns. Luckily on my map board, I have a compass on the very front. So my bar light actually lights the compass from the bottom. So as I'm riding, I can see what direction I'm going in. And that saved my ass on that section.
We should have put a picture of your map board in the comments because it is really helpful. Yeah. And I think something other people might be interested to know too is you do not swivel your map board around ever. No. You always have north up.
I'm sorry, on the bike, yeah. Which is the map board. Duh.
Duh.
The only time I do swivel it is if I am truly like a little bit disoriented. I will orient the map while I'm stopped just to look at the lay of the land. But when I'm riding, I always have north up.
Yeah, I think that's tricky. I'm getting more used to that because I think it gets me, my head is better when I do that too. But Chip's taught me that and I've had to practice that. And I'm nowhere near as good at it as he is. Anyway, so then you get out of the park and I think that's where like the big girl navigation started. And some people had some trouble around 29 especially, and then getting up to 30, and you passed I think 4 teams there.
Right, but they were hanging out together. These are all friends.
It was hard to tell from the dots like whether they were together or not. Their mistakes looked similar, but a lot of teams had trouble here too, not just those 4 teams. So that was an exciting time.
And they did warn us in this that the course was going to progressively get harder, and specifically leg 5. And they were exactly right. Leg 4, all the CPs is pretty much nothing tricky. Even the bike section in the park was hard. The CPs are getting further off the trail. It's harder to find an attack point. You actually had to know what you're doing or you're going to wander around. And so even like, I think Brent, I was coming out and Brent was going in, and I told him, I was like, stay on top of the compass. It's getting progressively harder like they promised. And as he went by, even there was one team that was stopped and they were looking at their maps like, hey guys, everything going okay? And yeah, we're just looking at the maps. I'm like, well, pay attention because it's progressively getting harder. And they're like, that's not helping. I'm like, just telling you, you need to be on your compass for this or things are going to go off the rails.
Yeah. So anyway, good job there. Then you made a giant leap ahead of these guys. And then not so much, they caught up again. That point, number 32, looks like it must have been tricky. A lot of people had some parallel problems there. Was that trail actually there? It looks like there's like a road.
That's my track.
This is your track, yeah.
32.
The clue is a stream, and it was on your, you were going to be starting up the ridge. It doesn't matter that much, except that you didn't falter all but so much. And, those guys caught you there, but you passed them again. Like you were able to keep in front of them.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that. Okay. So the way it looks like on the map, it looks like it's just a real quick trail up there. There was actually multiple roads, meaning dirt roads, like all coming in, and it was muddy, and So what I did there, I saw another road that came in from the top. And so when I got to that point, I was like, I got to get back out of here. And then I got to go back in and reattack and pay more attention. So yeah, yeah, they caught me. And these are all the guys that were there. There were a couple solos and Jason and Al, and like we're friends, we're prior teammates and all of that. I really on this race, I wanted to race my own race, even though I am chatty as I go by other teams. But what I didn't want to do is like connect with a group and then operate as a group because I always operate as a group. This was really, I wanted to see how do I do in a solo race, pushing as hard as I can, managing my own race, my own body, everything. So even though I was with them for a couple of periods of time, and we worked together on a couple of those points, I was trying to break away and go do my own thing. But so I wouldn't say I passed the teams there. It's like they had gone up a parallel error, and I was about to make the same parallel error on the reentrant. And so as they were coming back down, they said, that's not up there. We're on the wrong thing. And so we kind of worked together on the next 2 or 3 points. And I had misplotted one of my points. So I was in front of them. I'm looking all around. I can't find the point. I was like, hey guys, you mind if I look at your plot? Because I think mine's off. And they're like, yeah, sure. And so we attacked one of those points together as a
Nice
group.
that you had someone
Totally
near you
nice.
right
Yes,
then.
they
So
saved my
you
ass.
picked and chose when you
No,
wanted help.
No,
But I think what you said earlier today is that you offered some advice earlier
yeah,
too. So
again,
a lot of times in adventure races, kind of tit for tat, like, oh, you helped me back there, I'll help you here. And then you're even again, then you can decide the next time if you're gonna help or not. I pulled up Brent Russell's track just because it's that same point and he had a parallel issue there. You can see it really clearly. Anyway, so
there's a lot more going on out there than
that's what I assumed. And since I did pick on him, I will show his excellent track between 29, 30, and 32 or 31. Perfect. So anyway, that's kind of fun to see. And so like I said, this was the moment when you passed up quite a few teams there. You get to the top of the ridge and now you're passing Tansy Nav, which is exciting. But there was a decision point here. Some teams decided to call it there and go back down and finish their race.
That ridge line was hard, and I could see why teams would choose to go back down and not do the ridge line. The ridge line is even you're carrying your bike. The ridge line is super rocky, chunky. Like if you are not a strong mountain biker, that's a hike bike. This is a lot of that. I don't know, maybe 1/3 to half of it is unrideable by somebody who's not super comfortable going over baby heads and chunky rocks.
So what percentage of that did you ride?
I rode almost all of it.
99.
There was a couple, maybe not 99. I mean, there's probably out of that entire stretch, there's probably 10 minutes that I hike a bike. I don't know distance wise. It's only when it's like uphill and super chunky. What is also on any of these races, it's again, race of attrition, don't break your stuff. I didn't want to take any chances of a derailleur getting hit by a rock, like when you're going through two rocks that are side by side and you can rip stuff off. Also, you don't want to fall. Now, I learned very quickly in adventure racing, like a lot of people, they use their clip-in pedals. And I've switched over to where I'm just wearing run-in shoes because when you're going through this chunky stuff, if you're clipped in and you can't get out and you get really hurt. And so I was going through with just run-in shoes. So I felt comfortable going through a little bit of the more challenging stuff because I knew I could just jump off the bike if I had to. But either way, I knew that when I got to that ridge, I was feeling really good. Like when I passed Latanzi's team, was it Tansy Nav? They were getting ready to take a break and they were huffing and puffing a little bit. And I was past them and we chatted for a minute and I kept going. I remember thinking, it's like, wow, I'm feeling really strong right now. I'm pushing hard. When I get to that ridge line, I'm going to blast it on the bike. And so I think I was coming into my element when I saw them taking a break and struggling just a little bit, knowing how strong that team is. And I was feeling great. I was like, okay, this is it. I need to pedal to the metal. I'm in my element. This is my chance to really go hard and fast and burn your matches. I think Nathan Fave said it in one of the podcasts, like he thinks he's got a book of matches and he staves the matches. And you only burn them when you need them because you only have a certain number of matches. And I remembered it at that, right as I got to the top of that ridge line, let's start burning matches. I've been saving up all day. All I got is this net. I got like, 6-7 more hours. What's that? That's a sprint. So
well, knowing how many you needed later in the race.
I did need some matches.
I don't know. But so this point 35, was a big decision point for a lot of teams. And the vast majority of teams decided at point 35 that they did not have time to continue on to get any more points, and they headed back to the start finish. Chip, however, made the smart decision that he did have time, and there were a cluster of 4 points little farther north, and then more north of that, another cluster of 4 points. And he had shared a video of his time cutoffs that he was self-imposing. And so I knew that he was probably going to go at least for some of those points. And it got really exciting. And man, I don't think I've ever been more worried about you getting to a finish.
And that's usually
so tell us about that.
On a team. Normally, I'm the guy wanting to go after every CP, and normally I have either Andrew or Caitlin or the logistics person that are making sure we're progressing through the course, and we set our arbitrary cutoffs. So this is not my thing, but I knew it's like me as a solo in the epic, I need an adult in the room. So I was like, okay, what would Caitlin do? What would Andrea do? So luckily they gave the maps out the night before, and so we were able to do a lot of strategy and map prep and all of that. And so what I did is I map wheeled all of those leg 5 furthest points, whether it's checkpoint 35 or ones before that, like every major decision point where this might be where I need to head to the finish. I did a map wheel to get the distance from those points. And then I assumed, and I just pulled this out of my ass, I assumed that I could average 7 kilometers per hour on my bike, given that I've got to push up and over these ridges. Because I knew that at some point you're on a downhill, you're going 30K an hour. But so I literally just pulled 7 just out of the air. And so I went to all these major areas and I wrote on the map the number of kilometers that it was going to be to the finish. Now remember, this is 2-dimensional kilometers, not 3-dimensional, with the ridges going up and down. So let's say if it says 12, maybe it's really 14. And so I gave myself these cutoffs. So on my map, I wrote it said 8 a.m. cutoff, 8:30 cutoff, 8:45, whatever, on each of these sections. And that seemed to work. Let's say as we go through here, and I don't know if you want to go through some of these checkpoints, like the ones that you're looking at right now, the checkpoint at Duncan Gap. 3 of those I popped them no problem. Although the 38, it was they kind of, there's a lot of streams in there. It wasn't just one, and I had to attack that one twice.
It looks like at least twice. It almost looks like 3 times.
So I actually did I shot a bearing at Duncan Gap, like the gap between the mountains. I shot a bearing at that. And that way I knew exactly where I was. Like basically, if you take your compass and you draw a line from Duncan Gap to that CP, then I could see exactly where I was and that I was attacking the CP from the correct angle. So I knew I was in the right spot. It was just a matter of they just had buried it in some stream. So I had to go round and round and around to try to find that. So that sucked, because this also, remember, the minute you give up a point, you're done. You have to find the point.
That's a great idea for an attack point, because these points on the left, the north side of that trail, there's nothing really, no smoking gun as to like, oh, I should enter here.
Well, there was a trail on, what's this one?
Yeah, but that's going up to a high point. That would be semi-easy.
But from that trail where it connected to the road, I was able to measure down using the bike computer. That's why that attack looks perfect.
Oh, interesting.
So I was using known trails as measurement. Now, as you go up to the other 2 points, there was not a known. So that's why I used the Duncan Gap bearings.
So do you remember what time it was that you got all 4 of these points?
When I was messing with this one, the one that I had the trouble with on the stream, that CP38, that's when it was getting light outside.
So like 7 o'clock, 6:37. And your cutoff from this section was around 8. So that's troubling. And then
so I basically had an hour to get up there and get a couple of these points. And then
so mentally you had an hour to go all this distance north. And these clusters are not close together. There's a cluster here, and that's quite a distance. I wonder how many K that was. I don't know. But so you're right. The attack points don't look nearly as obvious anymore, but I assume you saw this water.
Yeah, the reservoir was an easy one. Yeah, that was a piece of cake.
And you know what time it was there? After you got that?
Not these 7:20 or something like
that. Did you even consider not going for the next one? No. So you're definitely going.
Here's where I made the error. Up here in that cluster of 4, I think I had an 8:20 cutoff, but it went up and over the signal knob. and all the buzzards and all of that, which is a huge elevation change. And a lot of that's not going to be rideable. So as I was getting up there, this is where a lot of the other teams, had not even gotten this far. And so I saw, as I was riding up from that reservoir at that CP, I saw teams going down to the right. And I look at the maps and I realize they're going back down. They're going through the gaps to cut through the mountain instead of going up and over. So at that point, I had to reshuffle my strategy. I'm not leaving from here and going up and over Signal Knob to get back. These other top teams that really know what they're doing,
I mean,
they're heading down to the gap. So I realized my cutoff is not this cutoff. My cutoff is the cutoff to the south. And that's where things got a little bit dicey. And Rootstock, I met them there, and they said that other teams were looking around for 2 hours. What checkpoint's that?
41.
41. So they said that other teams like Strong Machine and Vert, all these teams are in there. They were basically, you can't progress until you find a checkpoint. So they had wasted 2 hours looking for the point. They were rock solid. It's not there. So then Rootstock headed off to the south. So I knew all the teams were going south. They weren't going up and around.
I don't know that it was a full 2 hours they were looking. Maybe it
Rootstock,
was.
It was I think Strong.
Yeah, there were all of the top teams up there looking. So that makes me wonder, then knowing their top teams are ahead of you, like if they weren't teams that you could trust, you might have stayed there longer, or you might have gone your original plan to keep going north, and you wouldn't have made it back.
I wouldn't have made it back.
But so
the cool thing is, look at that. I didn't see my track. This is the first time. I mean, I measured up from that road 400 meters, and I shot in 175. And then I went a little further and a little back, and I went side to side, and I went up this way just to see if it was a parallel area where there's another stream. Yeah. But I'm surprised, like, if that CP would have been there, I would have nailed it.
Yeah, if you're listening on the podcast, you can't see this. There is literally an X marks the spot where Chip's track goes directly through the very center of where the CP should have been. So us dot watchers thought it was there, and that everyone got it because the tracker system.
So other than that, I think so Rootstock left. I may have spent I would say at least 15 minutes there past when Rootstock left.
Yeah, I would too.
And so then now, since I had just ridden up there from the cluster of 4 below, I knew it was a lot of downhill. I knew I could move pretty fast. So as I was humping it down there, and just to be honest, I missed that other gap, whatever gap that is that the other teams went through.
There's 2 other gaps that other teams went through. So there's a trail right in between 40 and 41 that came over the mountains like that most of the other teams took. Vert took this gap right here and came around. And then when Chip kept going, I started panicking. I thought maybe he's even confused at where the start finish actually is. Now in hindsight, I guess that's silly, but we've done some pretty dumb things before.
And then, okay, so what was in my head, because this probably looked absolutely crazy from the outside. All of that trail out was familiar to me. So I knew what was downhill. I knew what was uphill. I knew what Beach Gap was going to be like going through there. I knew I was going to have to hike a bike up that one section. I knew once I got on the other side of Beach Gap and bombed down to the road was going to be fine. So really, I was going known versus unknown, and I had already map wheeled it out, and so I was like, okay, I know my averages. If I can just hammer on the bike, it's all familiar, and so I didn't have to stop and look at my maps and do a lot of nav. It was just like I just had to go back the way I came, and so that's really why I chose that. It looks like a dumb decision when you look at the distance compared to what the other teams did. But when I found out I beat Rootstock back to the finish, and I had looked for the CP for 15 minutes, so maybe it was the right choice.
It was anything but dumb. Like you beat them back. They were 6 minutes overtime. And so of course you got a lot of kudos online that you had the best route. And then you telling me that you didn't even see the other 2 routes.
Didn't even consider.
So like, wow. So you are a genius, but
I got lucky, I guess.
Maybe there's some luck involved.
Some luck.
Very exciting though that you came around that corner and made it to the finish with how many seconds to spare?
Well, I got across the finish line with less than 60, but of course I didn't realize I needed to punch. So I come flying in and I dump the bike and they're like, Chip, you still got a punch. I'm like, oh shit. So I had to pull out the punch and run over there. I had 17 seconds left and I punched. It
Oh,
was crazy. And if you look at the video, I was hammered coming
yes,
into
you
it. 'Cause I'm
were.
looking at my watch, 2 minutes,
Oh my
1 minute.
gosh.
It was
It
crazy.
was killing me at home. It was killing
And I
me.
knew like Andrea's gonna be screaming at the screen, like at home, not watching, just like, I told you,
Yeah.
Chip, you're supposed to leave a buffer.
Well, and
Like,
Doug Silk was messaging me too. Like we were really, really going back and forth. Is he going to make it or not? What's he doing? Yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch. So great job.
and the other funny thing at the finish, and again, I don't know where anybody else is. I'm assuming the solos cleared the course just like I did. I'm the last guy, so I'm thinking my placement's way down. Like I'm just like this, there's so many other teams because the idea is that it wasn't like we it's not like we had more points that we could have gotten, right? Everybody got to this one point and then stopped. So it's whoever made it back first from that last checkpoint is going to be the winning team. So I know I'm the last guy coming back from the last checkpoint. So I'm thinking I'm way down the list because all those solos that have been smoking me the whole race, I'm just assuming they're still in front of me and they already made it back. So then we get to the finish line and they're talking about they're doing the podium and all this stuff and they're like, oh, and this solo racer, he made it in 20 hours. And I'm like, holy crap, he beat me by 4 hours. Like that's crazy. Like these guys are monsters, like so the first two guys had finished the course in 20 hours. And I was like, man, I was pushing too. I don't know how these guys smoke me. And then so when I get on the podium, so the one guy was just sleeping, and the first guy they called. The second guy's there, and he steps up, and this is one of the guys that I was chatty with while we were getting to the paddle TA, and he won it last year, right? So I was like, so I go up there, I knuckle bump him like, congrats, dude, because I'm thinking I'm third, and I get on the third place thing on the pony, and Mary's like, no, Chip, you won it. I'm like, I won it. He got here in 20 hours.
No,
I had no idea.
wow.
She corrected me. She's like, you need to be on the top. I was like, whoa, I actually.
The only
I didn't know.
male solo racer that went for those other points.
I had no idea.
So you crushed them. You got 5 more points, 6 more points than all of the other solo teams. And only 6 teams got more than 35 points. So you came in 5th overall, first in your division. So exciting. No one cleared the course. Maybe they could have if that one point had been there. I know Mark Harris is going to check it out and see what happened to it. Anyway, it was not cleared, and you did amazing. I'm just really proud of you. So,
I was pretty happy with it.
You going to get new teammates now?
No, I'm fine. Pushing is hard. That's the one thing that I really like having a team, because a lot of times, I'm not going at full capacity, but when you're going full capacity for 24 hours, it's a lot. I mean, it's like you really, basically your heart rate, in my situation, it was mostly heart rate was my limitation. It was like my body won't go harder or faster. It wasn't injury or a lot of the going up and down the mountains. It's just like, God, just another step. It's just, you can't go any faster. And to sustain that for 24 hours, it was hard. And now I know, like when you see these top teams coming off and they're all limping around and looking like old people, like it's because they're going that fast the whole time. And it's really impressive. Like,
I'm glad you got a chance to do that because, it's not that many opportunities that it makes sense to race by yourself.
Yeah, that's true. It's a different type of race.
Yeah. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to share?
No, I'd say good job on Adventure Enablers for putting on another great race. The course design was amazing. I love the idea of the first few legs were like showing off the easy stuff, like the nice mountain bike trails and making it accessible. There's a lot of people, like as I was talking to people at the finish, like they're like, you use a bike computer? Like, why do you do that? And just simple questions of like, how do you measure? And you have a compass on your map board. And so I like that this format made it so that those teams that are brand new, it's their first time, they could go through and have a really good experience in the first 4 legs. And basically they warn you, like you go on leg 5, you better put on your big boy panties and suck it up because it's gonna suck. And that way a lot of teams knew, like they could go back to the finish and bag a good race and not go out there and really suffer. But the top teams, they want the challenge. I'm like, bring it. I can't wait to get over that mountain and get way off into the distance and try to get those hard points.
I think it's big girl panties.
Big girl
by the
panties.
way.
I wear big boy panties. Yeah. So either way, I appreciate that. Their group of volunteers were great. Everybody was smiling and cheering us on. The media was really good. There was a lot of dot watching. There's a lot of video cameras on the course. And again, I have not seen any of this. I like just barely made it home and crashed. So I'm looking forward to looking through all the media. So, but to have live footage from checkpoints, it was like you get to a checkpoint and there's a camera there, and it would light up and say, "Oh, tell us your name and how you're doing and what's going on and blah blah blah." And so there's 2 checkpoints with cameras, and apparently there's TA cams, so you can see people coming and going from TA. So I think adventure racing, the more we use technology to make it accessible to the masses, and especially dot watching, the more you can like pick a team and root for your team. And so I appreciate Adventure Enablers going out of their way to do that. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I hated not being there. Even though I wasn't ready to race, it would have been fun to cheer everybody on and volunteer. Maybe next year.
Maybe next year. Cool.
All right. Well,
that's another
thanks for
Race Ramble
listening.
wrap up.
Yeah.
Cool.
Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please take a moment to leave a rating and a comment.
If you have a question for the next mailbag segment, call 757-354-4795 and leave us a voicemail or a text with your name, city you are calling from, and your question.
To find additional content, including the video versions of these discussions, you can search for Disability Racing on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
We hope this podcast inspired you to focus on your abilities and plan your next adventure.
See you on the trail.